Hello, welcome back. It is November 4th, Wednesday, 1 p.m. Pacific time, the day after the American election. It has been a nail-biter. I tell you what, if you haven't been glued to your TV watching what's going on, I don't know what you're doing. So I am Anthony Mueller, the wine advocate reviewer for Washington State and South Africa. Today I have one of the originals from Bot River. We have Mr. Sebastian Beaumont. He'll be joining us momentarily. I see his requests. Let's see if we can get him in here. Hope we're having a fantastic Wednesday, staying safe, and making it happen. Hello, sir. How are you?
Jeez, did I interrupt the music there, Anthony?
You like it? Awesome.
Very sweet, man. I love it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day and busy night with the time change. So that daylight savings times, I now know it's 11 p.m. your time, and we'll probably end up around midnight. So thank you so much for staying up for us. We appreciate you. And for those people who don't know who you are or aren't familiar with Beaumont Family Wines, can you please introduce yourself and give us a quick background about yourself and your brand?
Sure thing. It's great to be here, and thanks for setting this up, Anthony, and inviting me to join you.
Pleasure.
All the way from the Bot Riviera in the Cape in South Africa. So most people around the world don't know where I live, where I farm grapes.
No.
It's this tiny little appellation southeast of Cape Town. It's a kind of a place that most people drive past. Occasionally they run out of fuel or the car breaks down, and so they have to end up in my town. And it's 1 hour outside of Cape Town. So the town is called Bot River, and we've been farming here for the last 46 years on this farm that was a traditional kind of an outpost farm for the Dutch East India Company way back, and my parents found this kind of rundown old wine farm way back in 1974, and slowly started renovating it and fixing it up and getting something going. And it's been a labor of love over the years. It's taken its time, and I'm obviously part of the family. So one of those kind of children that had their arms bent behind their backs, forcing them by their parents to get into the wine business. So I'm kind of farmer, winemaker, father, husband, business runner, I guess. Although I think Nikki does most of that, my wife. And we run a proper small family wine business down here in South Africa. So
A man with many hats.
Speaking. It's the nature of family businesses. I think that's the beauty of them, and it's the thing that excites us about what we do and keeps us kind of not one day being the same. There's no boring routine here, so there's always something going on. I'm just glad I'm not a wheat farmer, because those are the only lights that are on, other than the lights here in the cellar tonight. I just had a look across the wheat fields, and those guys are harvesting.
Yeah,
they're trying to cut the wheat at the moment. So we're surrounded by some wheat fields, and there's some rain coming in.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
it's good to have rain right about now. But it's
it's flowering time. It's a great time to have rain.
For sure.
Anthony, you're clearly a viticulturalist, man.
For sure. Yeah. I think for most people, and I know a lot of studying Psalms are like, where's Bot River? But if you say Walker Bay, like, oh, they start to have a little bit more of an understanding.
There you go.
But I mean, you're a little bit off the beaten path, and once you get there and you look around, you realize, like, whoa, this actually has some serious potential. And you try the wines, you're like, no, these guys are swinging for the fence. It's some serious effort here, and delicious wine. So I'm really thankful to have you today, and Thank you for staying up for us. So first things first, I know that 2020 has been really, really tough for a lot of people, especially for people in South Africa, because you guys had the government prohibition and then the complete stop of exports of alcohol to the rest of the world, which quickly was overturned. But you've had a little more difficult than the rest of the world. How are you and your family holding up, and how much surfing have you been doing this lockdown?
It's pretty much a roller coaster kind of year, you know. I think it is for everybody. I think nobody's kind of ever experienced anything like this except our grandparents, you know, maybe during the 1930s and 1940s must have come close to something like this. I don't know, maybe it's not even close. It's been an interesting year, and I think we remarkably have got through it still sane and kind of enjoying what we're doing. It's just the intensity of it that's been so relentless. You know, it's just been kind of constantly not knowing what's going to hit you next, you know, in terms of our business and the kind of the regulations that the government has put in place, which I think in hindsight, probably a few other countries could have followed suit. You know, we did quite hardcore lockdown here, and that had a massive impact on our kind of day-to-day lives, and maybe it's kind of given us a little route around this whole virus issue, which you guys seem to be heading into kind of the thick of it. So yeah, it's been a challenging time. We've had to reinvent a few things. We've had to do a lot of work on trying to keep our brand out there and in the kind of news and spaces where people keep noticing it. And I think we've done a few things on the farm to just bring people, even since you were here last. We've set up like a deli space with my wife's catering business.
Nice.
So we offer a few very light meals and interesting stuff. It's not kind of run-of-the-mill burgers. It's kind of really interesting stuff. So you can pop in and have an interesting meal at the same time as enjoy the wines when you're allowed to taste them and when you're allowed to buy them, which is all under rules all these days. So, yeah, it's been interesting, and I think we realized the fundamental thing of this is probably that we'll never be great homeschool parents.
Right. That's why there's the internet. But even then, yeah.
Even then, yeah. So we got 3 kids, and
thank you card to every teacher out there. We appreciate them.
Yeah.
The real true
Big
heroes
time.
of the world.
Teachers. It's like, absolutely. Pay them more.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at your side there, and you've got some racing stripes there.
Hey, Anthony, this is going to be for later, man. We were going to do this later.
Yeah.
This is supposed to be, you know.
Awesome. I know it's like
this is the real reason for us getting together.
Cool.
Do you think anybody can guess? Should we put it out there and see if anybody can guess why we're actually having a chat?
Right.
What we want to achieve at the end of this evening, right?
It was to drink some good wine, have a good conversation, and chat about awesome haircuts and facial hair. That's pretty much that's pretty much it.
That's it.
Awesome. So I know
it's simple.
Yeah, exactly. This is small things in life that matter, right?
Yeah.
I like what you said about having keeping the faith, having positive mood and staying happy, because happiness, I believe, is a state of mind, and we can choose to look at the bad things in life, and you can also choose to look at the good things in life. And when bad times come, that's why there's wine. You can enjoy some wine and be happy.
Yeah.
So Beaumont Family Wines has made a name for itself with the Hope Marguerite bottling since its first vintage in 1997, I believe, if that's correct. Where do you see that bottling evolving towards someday?
This is probably that's a kind of like where do you see your whole wine business going? It's like, for me, Hope Marguerite is such a kind of important wine in our range. It was born, what's that, 20 plus years ago, as a wine or as an idea of a wine. At that time, one of the only barrel fermented styles of Chenin Blanc, or fermented and matured styles of Chenin Blanc in South Africa. So if you look at that and you stretch that out and you say, what's happened to Chenin Blanc in South Africa, it's absolutely amazing what's happened. With the incredible array of amazing, beautiful Chenins that are being produced from old vineyards and from young vineyards and from passionate producers who kind of see not just the kind of marketing sellability of Chenin Blanc as a unique kind of offer from South Africa, but really focused on producing beautiful wine out of it, and I think that's what Hope Marguerite is kind of symbolizes for me and for our winery, is that grandparents are important people. So this wine is named after my grandmother, Hope Marguerite Beaumont, so my father's mother. And she was kind of one of those people who, even at the age of 90, you could sit down and have a fascinating conversation about any kind of topic. She would engage, she was enthusiastic, she was passionate, she loved wine, she loved farming, she was just an incredible person, and we drew the kind of inspiration of this wine from the energy that she exuded. And I think that, wine evolves with time and our palates change. I know my palate will change, yours will too. What we like now and what we like in 10 or 15 years' time should, in theory, be different.
Yep.
Because of the nature of what we, our age and our palates changing and evolving. But I think, Hope is there to in a way express the kind of the fundamentals of a family business, the principles by which we kind of run our business, and also the way that we love to make wine. So the way that I love to express this wine is that it must capture the essence of a vintage. It must capture the kind of spirit of Hope Marguerite, she was always an elegant person with a fascination of life, and she was kind of, she kept things really kind of inspiring, and I think that's what Hope, it's hard to relate that to a wine, but I know that Hope as a wine will always change with each vintage, will gradually shift and move in slightly different directions as I get older, or as maybe my kids take over and start making the wine themselves. It's a natural progression. I think as long as we stay true to our vineyards and the vineyards that grow and produce the grapes that go into Hope Marguerite, it's a very simple kind of evolution. The vineyards will get older, we'll get older. We'll have to probably supplement it with some young ones at some stage just to keep the energy going.
It happens for sure.
But it's an important. There's actually a portrait of me. I'm sitting in front of my photo wall, and this is the picture of Hope Marguerite.
Love it.
When she was about, she must have been about 24 or something like that. That was taken.
That's nice.
So she's, it's a cool, it's an amazing wine, and I think, I'm just pleased that it's part of this kind of awareness and kind of raising the bar of Chenin Blanc, both for South Africa and for French, or for anybody who's producing Chenin out there. It is an amazing grape. So, yeah.
I concur. A lot of people think of the Loire Valley when they first think of Shannon, but there's more Shannon planted in South Africa than anywhere else in the world. people really need to
Yeah.
understand that Shannon for South Africa takes on so many different faces and is good along all the gamut of the range of what Chenin Blanc can do. It can be really good under stub enclosure, under a fresh, zippy, acid driven freshness. It can also be good under a little bit of oak that's been aged, and it has more richness and roundness and more complexity. I've been saying, I think for Americans to understand Chenin Blanc a little better from South Africa, they need to look at it like almost it's Chardonnay, where if you think of Chardonnay, it can be made in a way where it's like stainless steel, fermented and aged, and it's very fresh and zippy and lively and energetic, but also can be made using oak aging and malolactic fermentation to round out some of that and give it more volume and body. And there's every point along the way of those styles will offer you something slightly different, but it still offers a really, really great expression, and it's food friendly, and the prices of these are just simply amazing. You should literally buy the case.
Yeah.
It's that silly.
Yeah.
Right? All this talk about wine is making
By the case, and that's not a South African case, Anthony. That's an American case. That's a 12-bottle case, right?
Right. Yeah. Because in South Africa, a case is 6 bottles, which,
That's
it's
right.
like no, where's the other half? I'm like, I want all. So we're gonna do something different, where we're gonna do the French way. We've got 3 wines to try. We're gonna start with the red first, and then we're gonna move to the whites. So we're first gonna start with the 2016 Pinotage from your property. Really delicious stuff. Why don't you go ahead and introduce this and talk a little bit about it?
Sure thing. Awesome, Ricky. Yeah, so Pinotage, the grape everybody has had mixed experiences with, I think. I had a very interesting first trip to the US in, I think, 2006. Yep. And had to walk around with my Pinotage trying to convince people that they should try it. And they half of them said, "Oh, amazing, I want to try that. That sounds fantastic." Another half said, they kind of ran away into the opposite direction and avoided me for the rest of the day. So it has a mixed reputation. Obviously, it has this inherited parentage of Pinot Noir and Cinsault. So the Pinot Noir part, I've had a little bit of experience making Pinot Noir, which because my mother, the initiator or the founding winemaker of our Beaumont family business is my mother. She has a little side project called a retirement project, and she makes some Pinot Noir. So we make that in the cellar here. It's not from our own grapes, but it's really taught me how difficult Pinot Noir can be. And I think Pinotage inherited some of those kind of inherent complexities and sensitivities that Pinot Noir carries. It's a delicate child. Pinotage is the rougher version of it, maybe the kind of the ginger-headed kind of version of the child, with the kind of slightly wilder character, less inhibition, and it expresses itself pretty intensely. I think my style is really trying to capture this kind of cooler climate style of Pinotage. So where we are 12 kilometers from the sea, trying to get a kind of a fresher fruit expression. It's not always perfectly in that direction, but it's kind of definitely more medium weighted in terms of Pinotage. And most of the fruit going into this wine were vineyards that were planted in 74. So they're nice old vineyards. And super low yielding, especially over the last 3 years where the drought has kind of had its effect on us. And so we've got 16, 17, and 18 with very small yields, 19 slightly increased, but tiny productions. And then making it in the style that kind of combines the kind of science of winemaking and a little bit of the art of winemaking. This is a more technical wine to make,
Yeah.
and the one that I'm pretty scientific about when it comes to looking at the grapes and looking at how one should handle the particular vintage.
Mhm.
So there you can have this, when you go into the vineyards, that's my first point of call when it comes to making this, is to look at where the grapes are in terms of ripeness. So I'm always looking at, going to taste those skins and see what the berries taste like, how thick are the skins, have they started to turn, just to start to show that kind of softness.
Mhm.
That's the first sign that I'm really looking for when before you do any analysis or looking at what the sugar levels are, because they are old vines, they tend to ripen pretty slowly. So as soon as the skins start to soften, then I know we're getting very close.
Yeah.
And then we'll kind of start doing some analysis and then take it into the cellar. Everything picked by hand, so no machine harvesting, and especially with Pinotage, because you can have kind of uneven ripeness in there.
Mhm.
So we go through and pick it, and then put it in concrete open fermenters. Fermented for about 8 days, so it's quite a short, sharp fermentation. A little bit of cold soak beforehand, and then it's punched down every few hours, quite a bit early on, and then let like a little bit less as we go towards the end, so that you don't over extract it. You don't want that harsh bitterness or kind of over extracted tannin, which you have to be careful of. And then malolactic in tank, so you need to get that done in tank and then take it to barrel. So once it's sulfured, take it to barrel after malolactic, and then put it in there for about 16 to 18 months on a bit of 20%, about 20% new wood. So it's it's cool.
It's funny, like if you look at like the color in the glass, it's fairly dark, and you would assume that there's going to be a lot of dark fruit here, like a lot of blackberry acid.
Yeah.
But for me, it's more the dark red category with like dark cherry.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that acid, because of like where you're at, that acid really drives through. You still get a little bit of that soft kind of leathery tobacco peppery thing, but instead of like having like a full blown like black fruit palette of like blackberry, cassis, currant, it's more like dark red cherry, dark red plum, with good acidity, and you've captured the acidity here, and I think I think you've done everything perfect for this expression, because you've right now I feel my palate salivating. Like the acid's really, really good. And as you said, Pinotage can be very, very tricky because it has that window. And if you don't get it right within that window, the curves of physical ripeness and phenolic ripeness sometimes will never intersect. Like most varietals will intersect, and that's when you grab them. Sometimes Pinotage, it gets close and says, "Oh, okay," and then they diverge and they're never coming back, and then you're going to have to make a wine from that. But this Pinotage is one of the good ones for sure. It's very friendly. It's
16 was a really beautiful vintage. It was kind of it produced definitely more medium weighted wines overall. But wines with very, very good acidity, very good focus, and really beautiful purity. It was one of our earliest vintages, definitely the earliest in my time. It caught us a little bit by surprise, but it produced beautiful wines.
Beautiful. Any last points of interest on the Pinotage before we move on to the Shannon Blanc?
There's an old Afrikaans saying that says, Pinotage is nie 'n draadsitterswyn nie. It means that it's not a fence-sitter's wine. It's either going to appeal to your taste or it's not. Yeah. And it doesn't, that's not you just have to give it a try and just see whether it works for you. I remember traveling through Burgundy and trying to figure out what Burgundy was about when I was just finished winemaking. And school, and we did a tour through Burgundy, and I said to the guy who was leading the tour, I said, "So how does this all work? How do you find the producer's wine that you like?" And he said, "Man, there's no shortcut on that answer.
You just gotta try.
You just have to keep tasting, keep tasting, keep tasting. There are thousands of Pinot producers, and you'll find one whose style you like, but that's what it's about. You just got to travel that journey. That's what it's. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Let's go on to the 2019 Shannon Blanc under stealth enclosure. This beautiful looking bottle here.
Yep.
And why don't you go ahead and excuse me, and introduce it and talk a little bit about it.
It's funny when as soon as one makes a wine like this, it kind of always gets put slightly down in comparison to your Hope Marguerite or your barrel fermented styles.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, Shannon is such a beautiful grape and wine when you don't do too much to it. And I think overall with my style of so you mentioned with the Pinotage acidity and as a kind of a core to that wine. Acidity in all my wines is critical. You know, I love acidity. I love when I find that bowl of fruit and I see the apple that's still green and crunchy, or that pear that's still slightly hard, or the banana that you need to, you know, really struggle to get the peel off. That's my kind of flavor. You know, I like acidity as a taste. It's just
that crunchy.
It makes you salivate. You know, it makes you want to drink more, and I think as long as it's not combined with too much alcohol, I think it really makes wines that are exciting. And for me, my style of Shannon is, again, to, even with this one, which is a combination of young vineyards that I have on the farm. It has some fruit that I've bought in, especially in the 19 vintage. I had to bring some in because my young vineyards aren't in full production yet. So, and this wine just sells too quickly. So I have to kind of put the brakes on it a little bit, but I needed to get some extra fruit in. So for the 19 vintage, I bought some from the outside. But it was good. It was good stuff. I vetted it a few times over. But the idea is to produce a style that's very it's fruit driven. Obviously, aromatically, you know, you want to be hooked. I think all wine, especially with white wines, you want that aromatic hook to kind of grab you. And you know, Shannon gives you a little bit of fruit. It gives you kind of a tropical mix of fruits, and then a little bit of spice, and that kind of should kind of get you going. And then on the palate, it's lovely and fresh and fruit driven. And I think, it's a wine that you should be able to drink from about 6 a.m. till about this time of night on my part of the world. So it's, you know, every wine is not pretentious. Wine is an essential part of life, you know, and I think as a producer, it would be unjust of me to not make a wine like this. You know, it would be, you need wines like this. You just need, as a winemaker, I need a wine like this. So,
I had a really great conversation with a master somm friend of mine about 5 years ago, and they were saying that how wines today, a lot of people go after, like, you know, the cult wines that they put in their cellar and they forget about for, you know, decades, and they come back to them like, look at my treasure from the deep cellar. And you start thinking, it's like, you know, in America, we purchase a bottle of something and then we generally consume it within 24 hours of it being purchased. You start looking at it as wine as not a luxury, but wine as a grocery. You know, you go to the grocery store, you pick up your apples and your steak and your vegetables and your, you know, protein or whatever, and then you come home and then you cook it and you eat it. You know, same thing with wine. For this price, I mean, this is I have it. I think it was 115 rand. Is that correct? Yeah. So 115 rand. So you're looking at what, about $8, $9 American in the States?
Yeah.
And that's
in South Africa.
Coming, but I mean, this is killing me. Like, seriously, it's everything it should be. It has that bright acidity that you're talking about. It almost has like this, like, slight underripe pineapple, like that's still kind of like chewy, like you bite into it and it's still kind of fibrous, and has that like bright, like acidity that kind of almost makes your kind of mouth wince, but it's like juicy and it makes you salivate. And it, for some reason I want chips with this. Like I want
Chips.
chips, like Lay's potato chips, not like French fries, but chips.
Okay.
It's funny. I was thinking with the Pinotage, it's like, you know, like oxtail ragu would be perfect with this. And these wines, like you make wines that are food friendly. Like these wines, your wines clearly belong like in a restaurant because that's where I think they show the best. Like collectors can of course collect them, but I think they actually show the best with food because they're for me they're wines that are drawn to food and they will help bring out you know, nuances, and you get the synergistic effects from food and wine, and they're like lovers. They go back and forth, and it just keeps getting better and better and better until, you know, elevates into something better. And it's great. I mean, for this price, for this quality. I mean, I'm thinking of like any producer in America that can do this well at this price, and you know, there's very, very few, and it's beautiful, beautiful.
Really, you must have quite a few. I mean, there must be guys around, and
there are.
I don't know.
But
you make so much wine over there. I mean, you know, it's like you must be able to dig them out somewhere.
The difference there is, I think we struggle to frame the wine at this price as you have done, where you have beautiful acidity like integrated into the wine that makes the wine more complex, and you've captured everything that is going on with Shannon with this wine, and it's beautiful. I mean, it's not an overly expensive wine. It's not an overly extravagant wine. I like using this term. It's honest. Like it says what it is. It delivers how it should. It's solid. Like this is a wine you can bank on and know it's going to be good all the time.
Yeah, that's the idea behind it. I mean, you just need to one needs to just enjoy it for what it is. It's delicious, and I think it's a good expression. You know, you were talking about that kind of slight phenolic character, like in the palate. It's quite a signature for me for Shannon, like that inside of the apple core, you know, just around the flesh around the seeds of the apple. That's a very like typical flavor for me in Shannon, and yeah, it's something that keeps it very alive in the mouth. You know, it doesn't just fade away. The slight phenolic character comes from the skins, and that kind of keeps the wine very energetic and very focused.
For sure. Dig it. Yeah,
like
a
lot of length,
apples, pineapples, citrus blossom. Those three would I put into you know, quintessential of what Shannon Blanc is. Peach, depending on when
if I could, I would love to have cracked a bottle of the 2011.
Cool.
Of this wine. It's an amazing vintage, but it's just still such a delicious wine. So it is something you can keep for a few years. I mean, most of us won't. I don't. I mean, I keep a few bottles for reference, but but we smash it most of the time, you know.
It's a good thing to do, right? Wine is meant to be drank.
Smash
I tell you what, though, next time I'm in town and I come to visit, let's crack open one of those 11s and check it out.
I'll log that in my brain.
Awesome. Any last words on the 2019 Shannon Blanc before I go on to the 2018 Hope Marguerite?
No, I just want more people to keep trying Shannon Blanc. That's all.
Solid.
Doesn't matter.
Solid.
Just keep tasting it, trying it. Yeah.
There's an entire canvas worth of colors to be expressed and enjoyed with Shannon. So don't think one size fits all with Shannon. There's more. No,
definitely
just for reference here, I'm gonna fill both of these back up because I've been drinking the 2019 Shannon, just so we have equal portions. Just to look at the two Shannon Blancs side by side. This is the stub enclosure, and this is the Hope Marguerite. And you can clearly tell that the Hope Marguerite is darker. It has that nice, beautiful golden color, which typically comes from either aging or oak, or a slight touch of oxidation. And smelling it, there is that touch of oak. It's not quite like the full 30% that like lifts everything, but it's like an elegant like half dose, so like almost like 15%, 15 to 20 that I get.
Hey, you know your stuff, man. Or did I send you that fact sheet?
Don't feel very sure with that. Tell you what. So we've got the 2018 Hope Marguerite. why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about the 18 vintage for this wine?
Yeah. So what's been interesting with and it's been reflected in Hope Marguerite is the kind of last I would say since 2012 the kind of even year odd year variations in the vintages. And it's really something I would love to have a lineup of all those vintages now and just taste through them, because the even years have produced more delicate and say more classic styles of Hope Marguerite than the odd years. And the odd years have started with the 2013 vintage, where we had a bit of botrytis and a kind of we had the sweetness in the wine that surprised my Hope Marguerite followers. And people turned around and said, "What the hell's going on in this wine?" And I said, "Well, I did debate about whether I should bottle it, but it was still a beautiful wine." And I thought, it's a reflection of the vintage, and this is what we got, and what can I do? It's just got to keep doing it. Put it in a bottle and see what happens.
Sure.
And so we kind of then subsequently 14 was a very delicate year and produced both in reds and whites on the farm. It produced very focused. It was wasn't touted as a great vintage, but if you come out to this area and you taste the wines from around here, the 14s are really beautiful wines with some time. They took a bit of time.
Yeah.
So it fell in the shadow of the 13, and then it fell in the shadow of the 14 of the 15, which was 15s were the kind of the greatest touted vintage in the last say 10 to 15 years. In South Africa, well, definitely in Stellenbosch and definitely for Cabernet. Yeah. But I find that 15s were very open wines. They're very easy to understand. And if I had been a young winemaker starting off in my first vintage, I would have prayed for a vintage like 15. Right? It was just like, please give me that vintage.
For sure.
You put the press on, you press, the juice came out, put it in barrel, it made the wine. It was done. It was on autopilot. It was so easy. So the 15s kind of show that they're very relaxed wines. And then you had 16, which again, absolutely linear, razor-like kind of vintage. Very early. I did panic slightly because the vintage was so early and I was worried about getting caught out with ripeness and too much ripeness. So I'm really looking for 12.5, 13 alcohol max on Hope Marguerite. Yeah. If it's over that, I think I almost consider it a fault, like cork taint or something like that. It's high alcohol and white wines just doesn't work for me. So I'm really looking at kind of trying to preserve the natural freshness, both on the fruit flavor spectrum and on kind of the drinkability or the kind of where the alcohol sits in relation to the rest of the kind of flavor and experience of the wine. So that's really important to me. And then we had 17, which is again an amazing vintage, and a vintage that's really, it's going to show itself I think in South African red wines overall. Definitely in my red wines, it's incredible. The wines are very balanced and very interesting. And in Hope Marguerite, you have this quite a kind of a bit more relaxed than the 16, but still had some of this tension that holds the wine together, which is really amazing. And then you have 18 come along, and it was like the little wallflower kind of lost behind 17. And I thought, geez, what's happened? But the longer you keep 18, it's one of these vintages that slowly grows on you. And the wines will take time, and they'll relax. I mean, I know that the 18 is kind of just starting to unfold on itself. So I would give it some time. And I mean, you can drink it now. It's beautiful. I think it's pretty. I think it's very well put together as a wine. So the fundamentals are there. It's just not super expressive as a vintage, but I think that's for me. It's like what I almost look for sometimes in wines.
Yeah, I think right now it's showing nice, but I think I can see its longevity, and I can see this with about 10 years of age starting to develop those kind of tertiary characteristics, the slightly kind of nutty tones that will kind of start to kind of bind everything together and then add those complexities and layers that that I look for in beautifully aged wine, and this will clearly age for more than a decade, no problem.
Yeah,
and you're gonna have
definitely
those. It's gonna, like, right now it's currently like bright yellow crunchy apple, where like you crunch into it and there's a little bit of juice, but like you're hit with like that awesome like kind of malic acid first, that it's like you salivate, and you want almost a little bit of peanut butter like with that. And I think with age and that nuttiness that kind of will come along, all of that is going to come together, and it's going to be awesome. I mean, it's delicious now, but I can see where it's going to be in about 10 years, and I'm excited for that.
Yeah, it's one to hide away and leave for a bit. It's definitely will be worth it.
If you're patient.
Yeah, I love it.
if there still is a world in 10 years, the way 2020 is going, tell you what.
Don't start with that, man.
I've been saying, like,
you've been watching David Attenborough, have you?
What's that?
You've been watching the new David Attenborough documentary, right?
No, I haven't. No, I need to. Though.
If you only watched half of it, then you would feel like that.
Oh no!
But if you actually watch it through, it's a very very good documentary. It keeps you motivated.
I love
keep doing things.
Bro. I was just saying, like, because of 2020, the way it's gone, I feel like we're due for like a zombie apocalypse, an alien invasion, and an asteroid strike in the next few months. It's just how else do you top 2020? Right.
Well, I can think of one way.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. He's just got to keep the vote, right?
Yeah. Well, Wisconsin went to the blue state, so we'll see.
Wow.
I'm watching it very closely, and I see that mathematically, we'll see. I've learned a long time ago when consuming alcohol, whether it be in a bar or restaurant setting, that alcohol and politics and religion do not mix. So
not a good combination.
Let's just keep the conversation.
I see there's a domain Kaine. There's a domain Kaine watching this little session with us, and that's Tim Kaine, who's a winemaker who, along I saw Madalena and Pablo, and they were all winemakers that got locked down here in at the farm for 5 months. So they were camping with us. And Tim Kaine is making wine up in Washington State, but he's from, I don't know, I always get it wrong. Must be Minnesota, or there he comes. Which one is it, Tim? But I'm not sure which. I know he votes in the right direction. I'm not sure about the rest of them there. So
that's a great thing about
democracy. Anyway, politics is not a good thing.
Whatever your heart decides, and hopefully all the votes will be collected fairly, counted fairly, and we'll have a honest and fair election. So let's talk about.
That's all you can ask for.
Let's talk about New Baby, because New Baby is a newer wine for Beaumont Family Wines. It is a really interesting wine. When you poured it for me when I was there last year, wine, I was like, this wine is so familiar, but it's unlike anything I've ever tasted. And I could see, like, it's like Shannon, but it's kind of like Sauvignon Blanc, and it's almost like Chardonnay a little bit, but it's kind of like there's all these things going on, and then you're like, oh yeah, it's a mixture of like these 5 varietals, Colombard in the mix, coming on. It's like, oh, cool. But they don't necessarily, like, for me, they weren't necessarily like everything at once. It's like bits like stand out, like here's a Shannon, here's a Sauvignon Blanc, and Chardonnay's over here, and like. And it was all these different things that were kind of like flowing back and forth. It was almost like watching like the ocean. Like it's all one water, right? But it's like flowing back and forth, and you can see the crest at different moments in time. How did New Baby come into existence, and what was its inception, and how do you see it evolving with the coming years?
Yeah, I think it's, as a winemaker and as somebody who's grown up on a property, is one of the kind of real, I guess, something that I always forget how to put it, but it's it's a real privilege, and yeah, to have lived on the same place for my whole life. You know, like sometimes I think about that and it freaks me out completely. PO Box 3, Bot River.
Right.
It's like this. I actually need to do other stuff with my life. You know, I need to go into my marine biology and restudy that and try something else. But I think when I came up with you know, my father planted the vineyards in the 70s and the 80s, and most of the vineyards in the 90s, and all of these go into producing or into portions that make up New Baby. And the name firstly came from my mother's kind of concept. Well, she always said that in the build up to a harvest, you kind of get all anxious.
Yeah.
You kind of don't know whether you're going to make a great wine again, or you're going to be able to repeat this vintage. It's kind of this anxiety. You've had a year's break, and suddenly you're faced with a new harvest, and the vineyards coming in, and grapes ripening, and are they going to be right, and whatever. So she said you always have this kind of angst, this anxiety that's similar to giving birth to a child. So she said, you know, I couldn't relate to it, but I kind of know what it's like having 3 kids of my own, and I saw it in my wife, and there's kind of like, you're really, you know, just not sure what to expect. You know, you're going to get something, but you know, you don't know what it's going to look like and how it's going to turn out. And I think New Baby, that's where the name came from. And I wrote that literally on the barrels that I marked and allocated to the wine. Yeah. And this was with the 2015 harvest. So it was the perfect harvest to make a wine like this first up. And I literally, I took an idea and I said, okay, I want this to be Shannon-led blend, because I think blends are fascinating as wines. They you know, whether you're blending different vineyards of the same grape variety, or whether you're blending different barrel portions, or whether you're blending different regions, I think you can make fast. You're building blocks, you're adding things in, and you're adding dimension to a wine, and ultimately you're adding dimension to your taste experience. And New Baby is kind of based on that. And you know, blends are not easy to sell in this kind of category, so they're not going to rush out of the cellar door, but I just felt, you know, it's my expression of being a winemaker and being creative, and not having people stand over my shoulder and say, hey, what you doing, you know, you can't do that, or this or that, you know, you need to get gold medals or stick them on the, you know, whatever, you know, however businesses are run. And that's one of the great things about a family business, that you can come up with something and you can create it, and hopefully you make something good out of it. And something really did come out of it, out of this 2015 New Baby. Mm-hmm. I was so excited by it. I just put the portions together, and I put them in a ratio of about 40% Shannon, 30% Sauvignon, and then equal portions Chardonnay, Semillon, Colombard. So the fifth varietal is Colombard, which nobody knows, you know, other than the cognac makers in France and exactly. So the Armagnacs and you know, Colombard here is a pretty neutral grape, but it's got beautiful acidity and very pure flavors. So it's one of the components. And I love Semillon, I love Chardonnay. I actually love Sauvignon Blanc when it's made well, and in a style so we have quite an old vineyard. It was planted in '84. It's kind of semi bush vine kind of trellised vineyard, and the Sauvignon out of here just makes an amazing wine. But I always wanted the blend to be kind of led by Shannon, so that was where the Shannon portion came in, and yeah, we kind of put it together. I've made it every vintage since then, and it's found its groove, you know, and it's a unique expression of each vintage, and it's this crazy wine. I mean, we've got a little bit of 17 left here, and it's just the most ridiculous wine. Yeah, I still every day I have to have a sniff at it, you know, just to figure out what the hell's going on. You know, it's like, it's awesome. There's black currant, and there's all kinds of flavors that ooze out of it. So it's really fun. And I'll definitely keep doing it, and just having fun with it.
Yeah. I remember when I was there, and I was like, wow, this wine is so unique, and it's so like layered and textured, and there's like, it seems like every like corner you turn, there's a brand new like expression from a profile that doesn't quite fit the Latin. Like it's like you're discovering the wine at each step and each sip, and it was like I'm trying to like recall like exactly like how I felt, but I was like I was confused and I was amazed at the same time. It's like I don't want it to stop, I wanted to keep going, but like, and you start to like try and figure it out, and then it got to a point where like, no, you don't figure it out, you just put your hands up and you just go with it, man. Like that's what this wine is about. Like good wine is good wine regardless. That's, I believe every wine should come with that promise. Every wine should come with a promise, and it should be that it is good. And this wine was like, it confused me, it boggled me, it intrigued me, and I wanted more. And that's, to me, a mark of a great wine. That like, you're trying to understand it, and then something changes. You're like, oh, but it's like this. But then all of a sudden now it's like this, and like it's like a moving target, and you just can't help but sit there and enjoy it, and like keep sipping, and then you're slightly sad when it's all gone. And it's like that to me is a great sign of a great wine, because you're enjoying it, and then by the time you finish, you're like, oh, I wish I had some more. So now you're making me wish I had. It messes
with your head.
Right?
We'll have to get some over there sometime. We're shot to Broadbent, like when I get Broadbent coming, baby.
Right? Yeah. It will come.
No, I love that about the wine. It's exactly like that, Anthony. It just keeps you intrigued and engaged, and just it's fascinating. Like it. I make a red blend that's kind of different, but similar in kind of concept as well. So with no rules, not being pegged into a regional, specification of what varietals to use, or to, just trying to keep it as focused on what is the best stuff coming off the farm in a particular year. What captures that, and what can express it. And that's also the great thing about this business, is that you can do it. You can change it completely the next year if you want to.
For sure.
Just to mess with your head.
Yeah. Cool. So I know that Instagram likes to kick us off about an hour into it, and we're about 8 minutes away from that. Let's talk about any other varietals you like to work with, or varietals that you find really intriguing. Perhaps a varietal that you haven't worked with yet, or perhaps a varietal that may be underrepresented, something like Sanso or Mourvèdre. What are your thoughts on those?
Well, the farm was planted before my parents got here. There was wines made, and I'll actually show you quickly. I'll just do a little flip over here. But there's some of the.
Sweet.
Those are some of the labels. Those are the old labels of the previous producers, and they had quite a bit of Cinsault planted here. So it was a grape that was planted. I'm quite fascinated by the Cinsauts around, and there's some really beautiful ones. I tasted some today, coming out of South Africa. There's some really, But I work with Pinotage already, so I don't need to add Cinsault to my Cinsault to my portfolio. So it's not that fascinating. My dark fascination, my dark side, if you want to know it, is a grape called Mourvèdre.
Yes.
I was looking up how to pronounce it the other day, because I'm always joking with people saying, if you want to go on a first date and you want to take a wine that'll stimulate the conversation around the table, and you have to take a Mourvèdre, because it's just nobody knows what it is. They don't know whether it's a single varietal. They don't know whether it's a blend. They don't know where it comes from or what it's about. And then you smell and you sip and you taste it. And even as a viticulturist, and you walk through the vineyards, you kind of walk past the Mourvèdre. You just see these very upright growing shoots, and then you taste the berries. You think, whoa, how do you make wine out of this thing? It's like, it's wild, and it's got a crazy temperament. It's and I kind of like I've fallen in love with it slowly over the years. It's like a good piece of music. It doesn't appeal to you straight away. It takes time to kind of get its hooks into you. And I'm a big Tom Waits fan, so you know, and he's not the prettiest.
No.
He's not the prettiest sound around.
He's got a pretty raspy voice too, but you gotta love him.
You gotta love him, and it grows on you. You know, swordfish,
Sure.
trombone, and all that kind of stuff. So Mourvedre is really my fascination in terms of reds. I work with 16, 17 different grape varieties already, just on the property. So we've got a lot to play, and over the years we've kind of built a following for our single varietal Mourvedre. I did a tasting for the Cape Winemakers Guild a couple of years ago, which was focused on Mourvedre from around the world. Saw some wines from Bandol, from Spain, from California, from the Australians, and it was a fascinating tasting and a fascinating kind of look into the world of Mourvedre and what's going on. And it's amazing to see how properties like Domaine Tempier and these kind of guys are really getting a bit of traction out there in the world for the grape and for their styles of wine, which are not easy. You know, it doesn't make easy wine.
No, it's beautiful stuff for sure.
It takes a bit of that's
the
long and short of
the knot of the hat with Monastrell. I know that I know that most people know it as, you know, Mourvedre, but
Mataro.
Yeah, Mataro, Portuguese, and then Australians. But it was Monastrell for quite a few hundred years before the French came and said, "Ha, Mourvedre." But beautiful stuff. And
so we kind of suited to growing it. Yeah, I think we're in quite a good climate for it. So Mourvedre. There's an old French saying that Mourvedre needs to be planted with its head in the sun, its feet in cool soils, and needs a view of the sea.
Yeah,
and basically find it all over like that. It's all along the coast, you know, and it works well. So I think we're in a good space for it.
Awesome.
So keep an eye open. Keep your eye open for it.
I'm a fan of the lesser known red Rhone varietals because I think they show a lot of potential, and they're able to take on the terroir and express sense of place a little more clearly. Because they're a little bit more finicky and they're hard to get right. We're almost about out of time. Right. I know there's a hair thing you want to do before we go.
Gee, so we run along that quickly.
Yeah, we're about.
We want to do this hair thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so our hair thing is the reason why Anthony actually contacted me. For all of you out there, is he only contacted me because he saw my COVID cut, which is my COVID lockdown cut. In the heart of lockdown, we, together with the 5 interns who are working here, who are actually just living with us, and my cousin Paul, who instigated the COVID cut. The COVID cut looks a bit like this.
Yes.
And but Anthony, you got to release the beast.
Oh, okay, cool. So we're gonna do this.
Okay, come on.
I'm growing it out,
because I know you've already won this competition. But this is the Beaumont COVID cut. Does have to have a few slices on the side, but come on, there you go. No, Anthony, now it's your turn. You got to turn up there.
When I first saw that picture, I was like, how did I not see this sooner? Because it was on your personal site, and I didn't I didn't realize you had a personal site until like much later. And it's like, how did you had like a red bandana on, some cool shades? You're like, yeah, that is awesome. That is stellar. And which got me thinking, like, because there's plenty of winemakers out there that do like a harvest, like a harvest beard or harvest like no shave harvest.
Yeah.
And they have crazy facial hair or crazy long hair or something. I think I'm gonna do like call to arms for all like the winemakers and wine people. Send me the craziest facial hair and like haircut for your season, and then we'll let the public vote which has the best.
Great idea. I like that.
Awesome.
Bottrova winemakers always have an annual thing called the Barrels and Beards competition, where we shave clean on the 1st of February and we grow it.
Do it.
So it's a tradition here already.
We'll do it. Awesome. Sebastian, thank you so much for taking so much of your time and your nights. I know it's almost midnight there, and we gotta go. But before we go, do you have any final thoughts or parting words for us before you turn in for the night?
No, I just think that you need to understand how much South African wine producers as an industry appreciate all the support that you guys, Anthony, as journalists, as sommeliers, as wine enthusiasts, as wine drinkers, and wherever you are in the world and wherever you find a bottle of South African wine, and especially in that hard lockdown, how much we appreciate and needed every drop of support that we could get. And I think there are going to be many producers all over the world. I mean, California and, with fire-ridden, fire-hit vineyards, and there's the wine industry needs to survive through this, and every little bit of support is really appreciated. So that's my only shout out to you guys. We appreciate the support.
Love it.
Yeah.
Keep it locked here until next week. We're going to be continuing chats 1 p.m. Pacific time. Until then, stay safe, drink well, and be kind to others. Cheers.